Jim Callis, senior writer, MLB Pipeline, always kind enough to kind of sort through the talent for us. Good morning to you. The Pirates, Robert said it with the first pick. I remember so many times in years past, you kind of knew who was going 1-1. Is that the case this year heading into the draft?
Dylan Cruz is a consensus top prospect. He's an outfielder from LSU. He's been the consensus top prospect coming into the year, and he still holds that place. But this year it's interesting. There's 5 guys who are probably worthy of being a #1 pick in most years. So he's not a lock to go #1 by any means. There's been some talk that the Pirates, they cut a deal in 2021 with Henry Davis, that maybe they'd look to do a discount deal and save some bonus pool money by taking someone like Max Clark, who's a high school outfielder from Indiana. There's another SEC outfielder from Florida, Wyatt Langford, who actually has even slightly better numbers than Dylan Cruz. So Cruz is the favorite, Lauren, but it's still kind of wide open, and we have a little over 5 weeks to figure it out.
That's so interesting that more goes into it than just talent. I mean, I'm looking, Jim, at the projected picks. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the 5 top prospects are outfielders. For someone who doesn't lay eyes on them often, how do you differentiate between them?
Yeah, our 4 outfielders, we have Dylan Cruz from LSU, Wyatt Langford from Florida, Max Clark's a high schooler from Indiana, and Walker Jenkins is a high schooler from North Carolina. And Cruz, I think if you're looking to kind of separate these guys, Cruz is the best pure hitter of that group. I think Langford and Jenkins have the most power. Max Clark is the fastest and probably the best all-around athlete of the 4 of them. He's got the best chance to stay in center field. Cruz is a pretty good chance to stay in center field. Langford and Jenkins probably more corner guys when all is said and done. Cruz and Langford have performed very, very well in the SEC, which is a top conference in college baseball, while Jenkins and Clark are high school guys. So that's kind of how you separate them. And here we're looking at Dylan Cruz, #1 prospect. He would have been a guy, Lauren, who could have been a very high pick out of high school, and he pulled himself out of the draft, went to LSU, and obviously that move's going to pay off because he's going to go very high in the draft in a few weeks.
I keep thinking of these guys turning on the television and seeing where they rank against their peers. So exciting for them. It's interesting because on the mound it's Paul Skeens, right? It's 6'6". When you watch video of this guy, he's just a force. And then it's the rest, right? Is there a clear divide between 1 and 2? And who's number 2?
Yeah, no, but Skeens is the best pitching prospect we've had in the draft since Steven Strasburg back in 2009.
Wow.
And Steven Strasburg's probably the best pitching prospect in draft history. So that's pretty good company to keep for Paul Skeens. Behind him, I don't think there's a clear-cut number 2. Chase Dollander came to the year actually ranked ahead of Skeens. He's a pitcher at Tennessee, a right-hander. And he's had kind of an inconsistent year. Struck out 13 in his last start of the regular season. We'll see how he does in the regional playoffs with the Volunteers. He'd be my pick for number 2, but I think depending on who you talk to, you have some who might go with another college pitcher. That would be Rhett Lauder of Wake Forest. They're the #1 team in the country. He's been the ACC pitcher 2 years in a row, and he's just been consistently good start after start after start. He's almost automatic for the Deacons. He's got one of the best changeups in the draft, so there's a lot of comfort with him. He's been a lot more consistent than Dollander. And then on the high school side, Noble Meyer, might be better than either one of them in the long run. There is some risk that comes with high school pitchers. It scares teams a little bit. They'd rather have the college guy. But in terms of pure talent, you could certainly make the case that Noble Meyer is the second best pitcher in this draft. I think all 3 of those guys could go in the top 10, Lauren. And if they don't go in the top 10, they almost certainly will go in the top 15 picks.
I remember Steven Strasburg's debut like it was yesterday. Strikeouts for days, as highly touted as anyone. Anyone else we're forgetting? Because there's always that guy that goes in the 6th round, Jim, and then he becomes the guy. Who's on your radar?
Well, the guy who's just kind of on my radar, we just came out with our new draft top 200 list, and I think he's got the most helium of anybody on that list, is a left-hander from Kent State named Joe Whitman. And he was a guy who he barely pitched at Purdue the previous 2 years. Pitched 5 2/3 innings. He transferred to Kent State. They've got a great pitching coach at Kent State. Mike Birkbeck, the former big leaguer, has done a lot of great work with a lot of guys who've gone on to pitch in the majors. And they cleaned up his delivery. He's throwing more strikes. And now he's got a 91, 96 mile an hour fastball and a plus slider and a pretty good changeup. And I think college lefties are probably the weakest demographic in this draft. And all of a sudden, Joe Whitman, who had barely pitched the previous 2 years, I think he's the best college lefty in the draft. I think if the draft were today, he's at least a 2nd rounder. Maybe he sneaks into the sandwich round. Maybe he sneaks into late first, but he really helped himself and has had a great spring.
On July 9th, it is coming right up. You're going to be busy, my friend. Jim Callis, thanks so much. Appreciate the time.